So like if there's one differentiating difference I can honestly share with you guys between having guests on the Key Noisy podcast and doing a solo podcast is like you don't have time to like second guess yourself or your words. Like the moment you're in the room and record is on, that's it. And I find it so much more easier, even though I was doing solo podcasting for so long, since 2021, because I just love to interact with people. Like when you're doing a solo podcast, and I'm sure there's many podcasters out there that can relate to this, it's like record, then you'll say something, then you're like, oh fuck, no, that's not how I really wanted to start the podcast. Let me try again. And sometimes it takes me up to 5 times before I actually get into flow state like I am now, right now, like I am right now. So it's good to be back with you guys with the solo show. For this week, it wasn't planned. I'm being spontaneous at the moment. So Kelda Music from the US, entrepreneur, TV host, music producer, hip-hop artist, TV host. She is honestly so phenomenal, carrying so many hats, like all the other guests that I've had on the show, which we're going to do a recap on. So her agents reached out to me this morning or last night. You know, if you take the time zone into consideration, her agents reached out to me that something's come up. She can't make the show, which would have been at 10 a.m. her time. So we need to reschedule. So I'm like, okay, cool. And the first thing that came to mind, okay, let me reach out to the next guest on my list to ask them whether they will be available short notice, but it's just so unprofessional to do it that way. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me just do a solo podcast this week, share some dopeness with you guys, which I haven't in a while, like direct. And, just inform you guys of what's happening within the music industry at the moment, which is just down to one article on Music Business Worldwide. But I want to do a recap on the guests that I've had over the last 3 weeks and what you can actually take away by actually listening to these episodes, which look, 2 does go up to 2.5 hours of dopeness. It was great conversations with great people within the music economy. And with the podcast, the plan is a 50-50 balance. Like, I want to have guests on the podcast. That is the new era. But I also want to do solo shows as well as a consultant, just to share dopeness with you guys on what's happening with the economy. I know right now we're going through unpredictable waters being in the independent space. For a lot of you guys out there, there's no direction at the moment. There's financial responsibilities. There's not enough income. You don't know how to sustain yourself. Changes keep happening on a day-to-day basis, especially with technology. But that's why guys like me are here just to keep pushing you on and direct you where you may be falling short. And from what I've gathered, it's always mostly 99% of the time pinned down to finances. And the one thing that you guys are just not really implementing in your business right now is diversifying yourself. If you are just focused on the music alone, you are definitely not going to be able to sustain yourself, especially with the paying rate with royalties on Spotify and iTunes and Amazon and YouTube Music. You are not. You need to diversify. And this is a conversation I've had many times. This is actually tapping in to all the other strengths you have and diversifying yourself. So for example, Kino Isaac, he is a music producer. He does push out music, but I do not rely on the streams alone to sustain myself and take me to the next level. I have branched out using other skills that I do have, being a consultant. And then, of course, with Posh Magosh Records, being a music publisher, being an entertainment attorney, even though I'm not qualified, I can still guide you on what to do because it's coming from experience and self-education. So you need to diversify yourself. If you are running a label and you're signing artists to the label, but you're just doing production, you're not really going to go very far. You need to look for those sync opportunities. You need to look for those performing opportunities. You need to look for those merchandise branding opportunities that is out there. You need to look for those things. You need to look for sponsorship deals. You have to go further and above to survive in the music economy up to 2030. Grow your business exponentially. And of course, if you're an artist right now sitting at home listening to this podcast or a label team, please hit up Kino as a consulting agency so we can go into depth about this topic, discuss it, because each artist Each label is unique. The first thing we need to do is find your signature and actually what makes you unique and lay down the blueprint for the way forward. So with regards to Music Business Worldwide, which I haven't touched on with you guys in a long time, for those who don't know, Posh Magwash Media is up and running. You can always check out the site to keep up to date on what's happening in the entertainment industry overall. But one article actually two articles has caught my attention this week. The first one, which I'm not really going to go much into, I sort of laughed when I did come across it. And that's about a startup that's actually suing Spotify, going after Spotify legally. Here we go again. Spotify has another legal case, and it's with regards to playlisting. So for those who are familiar with Spotify, you can share a playlist with someone else. Doesn't have to be someone that's in your country. Can be someone anywhere around the world. You can actually share your playlists with that person. So what's come to light, what's come to the surface is this idea, which look, I'm not shocked about it. It's just how the guys or the top dogs in the industry actually roll. That Spotify didn't actually come up with that concept, that idea. It was presented to them by a startup. I'm not sure when. I still need to go into the article. And Spotify just reverse engineered and made it their own product. Now the startup that actually came with the idea to Spotify is going after them legally. And look, I'm a fan of Spotify, but I do believe the startup. I do believe. Normally, I'm not such a biased person, but in this case, I do believe this does happen with the guys at the top. You present them with an idea, they reverse engineer, they put the product out as their own product, but it was started with a guy at the bottom, which is why it's so critically important just to make sure that your ideas stays with you or is shared with people that you can actually fully trust until you can actually get like a patent on it, copyright it, whatever. Just secure it. This happens a lot, like in South Africa generally, where you think of an idea and then you're like, yo, this is a phenomenal idea. And then you go out and you start sharing it and you think the people that you're actually sharing it with have your best intentions, but they actually don't. And there's a good chance someone is going to say, okay, cool, that's not like a dope idea. And they will also like go out there, reverse engineer the idea and make it their own product. And at times the product sells, they become millionaires. You're exactly where you were at the start. So always be careful of this. So even if you producing tracks, okay, so you're an artist and you've done a few demos and so on, but then you start sharing it with everyone in your circle or everyone at school or college or university. No, that's not the way to go about it. Get it out there on DSPs. And if people really want to support you and your music, then they need to go on Spotify or Apple iTunes and they need to stream it. That is showing proper support for you. Do not play your music to outsiders before it is out. So the second article, which is what is right in front of me at the moment on Music Business Worldwide, is Universal Music strikes strategic agreement with AI startup ProRater, which just raised $25 million for a chatbot and tech to attribute and compensate content owners. So I'm not going to go through this whole article. I have signed up to be a partner with ProRater. You can as well. Haven't gotten any feedback as yet. So when this is launched, this is what's going to happen. Generative AI, to the guys at the top who are also heavily invested in big tech. It's just like how they can, negotiate their own rates on Spotify, yet they own like millions of shares in Spotify. It's just how they roll. It's good to have a piece of the pie wherever, and that's a good strategy to have. Can't take that away from them. It's something that we all need to implement. Even if you own one share of a catalog, you own that share. You are a business partner of that artist, of that label. So Universal Music has striked up this deal. Generative AI is, it's out of control. There's platforms coming up. There's a lot of platforms getting funding. I have personally used Suno myself and I'm enjoying it. I love it. The Kino and Brittany project was actually done within Suno, You go onto the platform, you put in your lyrics, it does the composition for you. It's phenomenal. Yes, you can differentiate between what's done in like a proper studio and what's AI generated, but I'm open about it when it comes to these projects that look, Posh Magosh Records, Kino Isaac has a 50-50 balance. We're still pushing out traditional studio recordings as a label, but we're also heavily focused on generative AI as well. So what Prorator is going to bring to the table, it's going to ensure that publishers, creators, songwriters get paid when compositions are done via generative AI. That's to sum it up. So it's like your music is with the publisher or you're a self-publisher, but let's just say your music is with the publisher. Their responsibility will be to make sure that you receive your royalties when your music is used in any performance, where either on TV, on the train, in cinema, on an ad, radio, wherever. So it's the same thing here. If Suno uses something and it's a sample that's actually belongs to a publisher or creator, for every time that is used, they are going to ensure that those original creators do get paid. So that's to sum up this article for you guys, which is quite interesting. And I want to see where this goes. But if a mainstream label like Universal is involved, something that's going to be around for an extremely long time. So I want to do a quick recap on the guests that we've had on the Kino Isaac podcast till date. Our first guest was Dr. Diane Kaufman, aka Diana, which is what she loves to be called with regards to her artist's name. So she is a songwriter, she is a poet, she is a lyricist, she is a visual artist, and she's a child psychiatrist. Her episode was the first episode of this new era, and it went on for 2.5 hours. Like, I was shocked myself on how long these conversations can actually go on. And by the time you actually reach 2.5 hours, you're like, there's still a shit more that needs to be said. But being Kino, I want the relationship to continue with all of the guests that I have on the podcast. I want us to get involved in different projects together. And that's exactly what Dr. Diana and I are going to be doing. More news about that, in the future to come. Stay updated on my social media platform. But her mandate, to sum it up for you guys, is she is a suicide activist. Now, in the description on YouTube and on Spotify, which is also a video podcast on Spotify, audio version as well, I mentioned to you guys, which is a number that's not mentioned by the mainstream media, that there is close to plus minus ball figure 700,000 people who commit suicide each and every single year globally. I was shocked when I came across this number. And this is not mentioned to the masses. So her duty, her organization's duty, which is called the Hold On campaign, is to use visual arts, workshops, network with people globally to prevent suicide from happening. And what's so special about her and what she does is she has actually experienced all that she is actually talking about. So there's a lot of credibility behind it. She has attempted to commit suicide, and this was back in college, and she mentions it within the podcast. She is like so open. All these guests are like so open. And look, she never succeeded committing suicide. She recovered from it. And now she is a psychiatrist and an activist to prevent people from committing suicide, and just sending out the message out there that there is another solution. No matter what you may be going through, there is a solution. Suicide is not the option. She has a YouTube channel. She's been on other podcasts. She has a lot of online content. So what she does is she writes the lyrics, and then she gets songwriters, composers to actually join her on projects, and they upload it on YouTube, and it's a songwriter just singing some dope lyrics that actually inspires you and tells you to hold on. And this visual is actually backed behind it. And it's so emotional and can really give you hope. So check out that podcast with Dr. Dan Kaufman to get the full depth of what was said and what went down there. Plus, where you can find her online, where resources are available. The crazy part about it is directly after the podcast episode. If I remember correctly, I think it was a day or two afterwards, I came across someone and they were sort of like in a suicide state of mind. And after having a chat with the person, based on the conversation I had with Dr. Dan, I sent her the podcast, I sent her the details for Dr. Dan. She listened to his content and she's in such a better state of mind currently at the moment. So proof is in the pudding that her work actually works. And right now, I'm going to be, as I did say, doing further work and projects with her to get this message out to people so we can do our best that we possibly can to bring down that number of 700,000 a year. It's a long shot. But I'd rather reach the end of this road in this life and say, look, at least I tried. So check out that episode. The second guest that we had was actually supposed to be the first guest, but she actually ended up getting COVID. COVID is like trending again. Is Zoe Tess, singer, songwriter, music producer. And the strange thing about this conversation, which also went on for 2.5 hours, it was such an amazing convo with her. It was supposed to be about her and her music, but there was a twist in the story. What she has done so well, which is a message that I've been sending out to artists for so long, is the change of mindset from artist to music entrepreneur. She shared her story, she shared her music. She was actually very open about, how she dropped out of college and she had to sleep in a car. And then she was taken by a studio and she stayed in the basement where the studio was for a year just working on her music. She open book about her life. And each thing that I've been preaching to you guys about that change of mindset, about doing whatever it takes, about being consistent, about being passionate, about being patient, she shared it. She seconded up with me. She shared her story. And she also gave critical advice to artists out there on what to do, how to do it. She touched on entertainment law as well, which is so important. It was a great conversation. For anyone out there right now who needs guidance on changing from artist to music entrepreneur, please check out the episode with Zoe Tess. All the information is there. And then it's just up to you to just take action on it. She also touched on finances and how, you need to prepare for those rainy days, like investing your money where it actually grows in stocks and so on that she mentioned within the show. We had a few good laughs about how the hip-hop culture is these days, where hip-hop guys are just about bling bling. And, myself being in hip-hop as well, one of the things I mentioned in the episode is about the persona that's actually pushed out by the labels to actually sell the music. At times we check all these rappers and they blinging out and they're driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis and they're balling in clubs with, 100,000 rand bottle of champagne, just to find out at the end of it that they don't own any of it. It's actually owned by the labels and it's all a persona to sell the music. It's the psychology of the music industry, and these are things that you need to actually realize for yourself so you don't get manipulated and you just go down being organic in your career. Which leads me on to the conversation there last week, which was with a metal band called A Moment of Violence. These guys are so organic. The first thing I asked them, what was your average, or what's your average weekend? And the thing is, these are just normal, humble, family guys. And I'm so clearly I haven't been around, or I haven't kept myself updated on the culture of rock music or metal music, where it's the groupies, it's parties, it's substances like alcohol and drugs and so on. And the one guy who's called Russ, he was nah, there's not the 80s anymore. So, but them being so organic and not loving the persona is really going to take them a long way. But the most phenomenal thing for me in this conversation that I had with The Moment of Violence was the amount of effort that they actually put in to their music videos. And I went on to say that if we were still living in the MTV era, they would have been top of the charts. And I don't want to say much about it. I want you guys to actually go and check it out. So you can go on to YouTube, search A Moment of Violence, AMOV. That's the abbreviation. Check out the channel and check out their music videos. You'll be blown away. Blown away. And the crazy thing about this, living in 2024 in the digital era, is that putting this video together took them like 16 hours. It's one day. The editing and so on took like about another week and it was out, but you would never say watching this video. So the effort they actually put into their music videos to sell their music and to sell their brand is absolutely mind-blowing. One of the critical things I mentioned, in 2024, there's like advantages and disadvantages. The industry is so crowded at the moment and there's super dope talent out there, but you'll never come across them as easy as it was back in the MTV era, because you would know who was who and who was trending and who was top of the charts and who's doing really well just by tuning into MTV. These days, it's not so difficult. MTV was your one and only source for radio DJs in that era. For podcasters, it's not that easy to source, okay, who's who. I never know who these artists were before, the agents actually reached out to me. So, sort of like makes it harder, but there is so much super dope talent. So for any rock band out there, any metal band out there, or you're part of a hip hop crew, whatever the case may be, I would recommend listening to these guys to get some perspective about how humble they are and how they stick together. And in 2024, they are still signed under a label, but they still have like major creative control. We touched on the red tape, the disputes that can happen between the label and artists in 2024. We touched on, how they keep the band together in 2024, how they handle disputes, how they handle different ideas, because they all have different wants and they have different tastes. So we touched on all of that. So for anyone within a crew, within a group, within a band, check out this episode with The Moment of Violence. So that's the first 3 for the new era of the Kino Isaac podcast. It's been a great 3 weeks. It's been overwhelming for me in certain areas, working in different time zones, prepping, ensuring that all the tools are working correctly. But look, it's going well. There's been positive feedback. I'm so grateful. And thank you if you have checked it out, if you listened to it on Spotify, or you checked out the Kino Isaac Consulting Agency YouTube page, which is fresh, We're working on growing it. It's fresh, it's organic, and it's just real stories from real people within the music economy. And if they can do it, if they can live their dream, their passion, you can also. Back to A Moment of Violence, I was so shocked that, the 3 guys that were actually on, they still have day jobs. They still come home to a family. Their weekends, as I said, is quiet. And they still manage to do what they do, and they do it so well. So please check these episodes out to get some dopeness, inspiration, empowerment, education, to keep pushing on, because you can learn from all 3 of these episodes. So there will be a new guest next week, Friday. For those who are familiar with Kelder Music and was looking forward to the conversation, it will come. I've got a guest next week, which I'm only going to announce, say, on Tuesday. And the guest for the following week would think is the 23rd, Friday, 23rd. Pending at the moment, whether that guest is available. But so grateful for the podcast is going and the work that we're doing right now. The Kino as a consulting agency. It's crazy. It's mind-blowing. It's phenomenal. It's empowering. And so much gratitude. So all the links to YouTube channel and to Spotify will be available. So there's 2 different Kino Isaac podcasts now on Spotify. It's the Kino Isaac podcast. Then there's the Kino Isaac podcast live, which has all the live videos. So the video podcast on Spotify, but the audio version is available as well under the traditional normal Kino Isaac podcast. So it's been great to be with you guys after a long time on a solo show, and hope this was insightful. And if there's anything that's going through at the moment, please do reach out to us. Peace out.